The Seattle Kraken are taking on the Montreal Canadiens tonight, which begs the question, did we make the right choice?
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, and it's a game day. We're going to get you covered as the Seattle Kraken start their 5-game road trip. My name, Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken. And, I'm excited for this road trip. If you heard me talk on yesterday's episode, then you know that there are a decent amount of questions that still need to be answered for the Seattle Kraken team. But we are not panicking yet. And maybe one of those topics up for at least discussion is the continued development of Shane Wright. That's what we're going to talk about on today's episode. Before we do, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at Game Time. So we want you to download that Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKED on NHL for $20 off your first purchase. If you got a flight to New York, hey, you might see the end to the World Series tonight, but we will get into a little bit more about the goings-on in sports throughout the episode. Okay, let's talk about Shane Wright. Is Shane with the right team? That's the question, the thesis we are going to try to answer on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Shane Wright and actually Jessica Campbell spoke to media yesterday in addition to Dan Bylsma. For those who are maybe joining us for the first time, the death glare from a few drafts ago still ringing in the consciousness of the Montreal Canadiens. They passed on Shane Wright, who then came to us at the 4th pick overall. And we've talked about Shane a lot. We've also talked about how the lines are shifting for this Seattle Kraken team, and both of those things coming into play as the Seattle Kraken take on a Montreal team with an identical record, but maybe a little bit more momentum coming into this game. So again, we got to hear from Shane Wright at practice yesterday, and let's get to a few clips. First from Shane, then we'll hear from Dan Bylsma. We'll also hear a little bit from Jaden Schwartz because that plays into what we're likely to see on the ice for today.
Obviously, it's a fun place to play. All the guys have said it's one of the best rinks to play in the league. So excited to be here and excited for the game tomorrow for sure. Obviously, really happy to be in Seattle. So should be a fun game and definitely looking forward to it.
What do you think of the beginning of your season with the team?
Yeah, it's been all right. I think some ups and downs. Definitely, always I can be better, but still just trying to learn, still trying to grow, and every single day just trying to get better, trying to improve myself in whatever way I can. But it's been an okay start so far.
It's been an okay start so far. And so why might Shane Wright be saying it's an okay start? Well, again, the Seattle Kraken are on a 3-game skid. And, Shane Wright, the expectation, not just because of how things went down with his draft, not just because he's a centerman, but again, we talked about this in the offseason. He felt ready for this level. Listen, I'm just going to get right to it. Here's my hot take. Shane Wright is doing fine for us right now. He's doing fine for us. The issue is that we haven't quite found the line pairings that complement Shane Wright and a litany of other players on the Seattle Kraken. Some of those, again, I talked about on Locked On NHL with Gil Martin, but I want to show you, this is the game score for the game against the Carolina Hurricanes. You can see Jaden Schwartz at the top, Burakovsky, who I said we were waiting to see what he was going to be able to do. And, he's at the top of the game score. Still have a few questions, though, regarding his particular game score. Ollie Bjorkstrand, love to see him getting active. Jared McCann has been great for us. And then right under there, Shane Wright, Matty Beniers. So, I think, we'll get to that in a minute. I think that we are getting good things from Shane Wright. I have not seen a game where Shane Wright has made glaring mistakes. He is not the reason, in my estimation, that the Seattle Kraken are not performing offensively the way we want them to. And we're going to have Zame Beg again on the show. And he's kind of the Shane Wright whisperer. We know he likes talking a lot about Shane Wright. So I cannot wait for Thursday's episode when we can dive into this conversation even deeper when it comes to Shane, because for me, and I don't know, let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, what do you think about Shane Wright? For me, I think he's doing just fine, but I liked in his comments that he said it's going all right. It's not, great. It's not terrible, but there's definitely room for improvement. And at least some of that has to do with personnel. And we know that the Seattle Kraken recalled 2 players. We're going to get into that a little bit later on the show. And they also have switched up some lines. And that's where Jaden Schwartz comes into the mix. He will be on a line with Shane Wright. We've seen Shane be the centerman for a few different line combinations now, trying to find that right mix. No pun intended, at least not that time. But it's still a process, as I think Shane in one of his clips says. But it's again one of those things for me. I'm not overly concerned right now. I'm not. And I'm keeping an eye on it. This is where the tinkering in a season where you have a new head coach, you've got a few new players, including a young guy like Shane Wright. This is where that delicate balance is important. And they're playing good teams. Carolina's a good team. Winnipeg, a good team. Colorado, they're good teams. Is the Seattle Kraken a good team? Is this a playoff team? I don't think we know yet. I just don't think that we know just yet. That's uncomfortable. It's like I say when I'm trying to grow my hair out, it gets to that uncomfortable stage and you're just tempted to chop it all off. But sometimes you just have to trim it back, let it do its thing. It might look a little ugly, but is it getting you to the overall goal? That's kind of how I feel about the Seattle Kraken. But, Dan Bylsma had some things to say about Shane Wright specifically. And of course, he also talked about some of the roster changes, including why bring up 2 guys when you're on the road. I think you can kind of deduce that if you've been keeping up with our salary cap and roster situation. But don't worry, we've got you covered here. Let's hear from Disco Dan.
Just is just maturation, really, as a pro and as a person. His hockey story goes back when he's 15 years old and exceptional status and draft and becoming a pro as the 4th pick overall, and he's just done a good job of putting his head down and being a pro over the last couple of years, developing his game, developing what he can do on the ice, and it's he's skill and a skater and a shooter, and that's evident more and more each day. As he's done a great job of just not worrying about the story, not worrying about the draft spot, not worrying about the numbers, just putting his head down and working on his game, working on who he is, and he's far past looking at the numbers and the stats and all that other stuff. He's just worried about his game, and that's showing up every night. We think the strength of our team is throughout the 4 lines, and we've tried to have some balance with all 4 of our lines, and we've gotten some really good play from the Gordo, Tanev, Cartier line throughout our first 9 games. We're still searching for, the Matty Beniers and Jared McCann and Ebbs have played really well the last two games in particular, and they'll continue on. But for Shane, today's a new line for him. Jaden Schwartz going on his line. They had some success last year in his call-up at the end of last year. For us to maybe see if that's going to be something that's going to pan out for making Ryder a big part of that 12-man unit that we have.
So there you go. I also, just think it's hilarious how Disco Dan still trips up over Cartier a little bit. Hey, who among us hasn't been there? Coming up next, though, on Locked On Kraken, I want to get into a little bit more of the changes that we're going to see or that we're expecting to see when the Seattle Kraken hit the ice against the Montreal Canadiens tonight on this game day on a Tuesday. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So in order to do that, visit FanDuel.com and make sure you join up today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League and, of course, us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Oh, baby. And today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. I tell you about Game Time all the time because as someone who travels a lot, loves to get in really unique shows and concerts or maybe check something off the bucket list of sports venues, Game Time is the place to go when you are looking for last-minute tickets. You don't always have time to plan everything out to a T, and you might not always have the budget to splurge. But hey, if you're in New York City for what could be a game or a series clinching win for the Dodgers, or maybe it's turning the tide the other way, a la the Boston Red Sox when they did it to the Yankees, you want to be in the building. And so Game Time is the perfect place to just take a look to see if you can get a really good deal on the hottest ticket in town. Now, one of the things that I love is the all-in pricing that you can toggle on the Game Time app. It shows you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. You can also view your seats before you purchase them, and you will get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create that account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time on a game day. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, reminding you we have so many amazing shows that you can check out in the Locked On lineup, including Locked On NHL. I was on Monday's episode, and I will be on Friday's episode of Locked On NHL. So make sure you stay locked on all of the news in the National Hockey League. All right. More line changes are coming. And, I tried to prepare you for this I tried to prepare myself for this as much as possible. But I'd be lying if I said the changes are a little bit more than what I thought. So if you're listening to the show for the first time, well, welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on Locked On Kraken. Make sure you join our YouTube community. We talked about this. Disco Dan Bylsma, our head coach, he didn't want to be beholden to a specific group that would always play together under all situations and circumstances. And so he prepared us that there would be some line shakeups. And there's a part of me that thinks this is critically important Injuries happen. We see Vince Dunn on long-term injured reserve. So we know that's happening. We know that's a thing, and stuff happens. Sometimes you got to shake things up. Sometimes you gotta, as I say, for those who listen to the show every day and are our OGers and everydayers, sometimes you gotta wake the bats up, or in the case of hockey, wake up the hockey sticks. And so I'm okay with that. What's a little concerning to me, especially given our conversation in the first segment where we're talking about Shane Wright, we're going to talk about him for the remainder of the season. This, of course, game, as Dan might say, has a little more juice for him. People want to know how he's doing, what he's going to do. Did Montreal make the right choice? Did Seattle make the right choice? There's a little more juice, right? A little more attention. Maybe a little bit more pressure, whether it's internalized or not by the team, by the coaching staff, or even by Shane Wright. We as media are talking about it, right? There's just a little bit more to talk about. And the fact that we haven't really been able to lock something in like super airtight. You heard Dan Bylsma in the first segment say, hey, our fourth line for a while, Cartier, Gord, and Turbo Tanev, that was the spark plug early on. Recently, it's been the top line, Beniers centering Eberle and McCann, one of my favorite combinations that we've seen throughout Kraken history. But there's everything else in the middle. It's like we're still throwing spaghetti. We haven't quite made things stick. And that includes Shane Wright. We haven't figured out what is the right combination. Chandler Stevenson, of course, the other centerman. Andre Burakovsky is someone I've wanted to see get activated. I think it's critically important for the Seattle Kraken team to find a way to get Oliver Bjorkstrand and Eli Tolvanen more activated. So what are the buttons that we have to press? In addition, we're on the road. And so the Seattle Kraken earlier this week announced that John Hayden and Cale Fleury, so a forward and a defenseman, would be joining the fray. And so I do want us to hear from Dan Bylsma about this, but first let's get a player's perspective, because as you heard in the clips I played in the first segment, it is going to be Jaden Schwartz that will join Shane Wright's line. And what is his approach when you have some of these shifts and changes? The amazing Piper Shaw able to catch up with Jaden in the locker room after what was a optional morning skate ahead of tonight's game.
First, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about just playing through all these line changes, these middle two lines. You guys have just been mixing it up. What does that kind of take, and what is that conversation like with you guys about how you can be effective when you're just getting mixed around a lot?
Yeah, you just gotta, kind of talk before the game, throughout the game. Most of it's like face-offs and little things like that. Once you're in the game, it's just kind of making reads and playing hockey. But throughout the years, we've had guys up and down the lineup switching wings and switching to centermen. So it's something that we're used to. But obviously, when you're not scoring as much as a team and you lose a couple games, usually little tweaks happen just to try switch it up a little bit. But you just kind of make adjustments on the fly and just have a little game plans off face-offs and little things before the game.
Is that just stuff that like you and your line mates that day will talk about, or is there like really intentional kind of conversations when those changes are made with the coaching staff? Just like three of you, or what's that kind of communication?
Yeah, there's just the three of us kind of talk. Because Ryder's right-handed, centerman, and Chandler's left, and they take face-offs different ways. So a lot of it starts with that, and then the rest of it you just kind of talk throughout the game, and everyone's smart players, so you kind of read off each other a little bit. But sometimes it just sparks guys, brings different looks, and try to get some more goals.
And Jaden almost got taken out by, I don't know if that was his glove, his mitt, or someone else's, but either way, I really appreciate Piper asking that question. Now, I think what Jaden is saying there, it's illuminating on a few different levels. Of course, there's certain things that are going to be easier because you're at the same practice, right? You're on the same team. These are not guys, with the exception of, John Hayden and Cale Fleury, who aren't in the mix. Now, we do have to integrate those players more so, and again, we're going to hear from Dan Bylsma on this, but more so in event of additional injury, bangs and bruises. Maybe someone just needs a rest day. But the thing that I found interesting is also talking about the nuances and making sure you have those conversations. And I love that Piper followed up, because some conversations I would imagine you want to have before you get into game action. You want to talk about, okay, in this scenario, this is where I like the puck. So set me up this way. And when I'm when I'm taking a face off from this side, from that side, in this situation, in that situation, this is what you can expect. This is what I'm looking for. You don't always know if you're going to execute, but at least you can get an idea of what is the go-to. You know, on the other side of the coin, having to do that multiple times within a short period of time, it can get to a point where then where does the consistency come from this team who, as Jaden said, knows that they're struggling offensively? Sometimes you got to suck it up, Buttercup, and just figure out a way to win. So I think there are a few different ways to see it. Again, not something that is alarming right now, but definitely something that I'm going to keep an eye on. Let's hear what Dan Bylsma had to say about the expectation from Shane integrating into a new line, but then also adding extra bodies on the road.
On a 5-game road trip, and over the course of the 5 games, you can expect to have some bumps and bruises and need some extra bodies around. So I think given our cap situation, we started with 12 forwards, and that maybe wasn't the intent all along, and so to have an extra forward and to have John Hayden had a great camp and did a lot of good stuff for us in preseason, and evidence of what he could do for us if he gets the opportunity. So both those guys joined us to be some extra bodies on the trip.
So Dan, a lot of one-on-one physical stuff in the drills today. How much of that is a carryover from some of what you saw in the game the other night, and some of what you'd like to see more of?
Yes, a carryover from the game, and yes, I'd like to see more of.
How would you like to see it manifest itself going forward?
Just the competing, the execution, under pressure, in tough spots. That's the game. You win the game in those areas if you're able to execute and compete in the tight areas, wall play, D-zone coverage, coming out of D-zone, and offensively in the offensive zone. That's where the game's won.
Looking at the Montreal Canadiens, what are kind of the defensive priorities, especially against those top 2 lines? That's the defensive priority.
Those top 2 lines. So I think, they have about 70% of their 5-on-5 offense in the top line, and they're skilled, agile dancers, good around the net. They show it. They show it on the rush. They show it. They show it with their quick transition. They get opportunities to show the skill off on the rush and the offensive zone. It's pretty evident, and it's pretty special to see what they can do in the offensive zone with their skill and with their ability, and they always seem to be doing it in and around the net. So a clear picture of what they're good at and when we need to be ready for.
So I think Dan gave us a lot of nuggets there, and I want to break some of those down, specifically thinking about this Montreal team. We will get into that in the final segment here on Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Now, at Prize Picks, it's pretty simple. You know the Seattle Kraken. You probably know the NHL. So you can 100x your picks using your analysis, your expert analysis and intel to be able to parlay that into big money. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. You will join over 10 million users and when you sign up today. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your pick hits, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. And did I tell you how easy it is? You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100x your cash. And here's the thing. We know injuries happen, things of that nature, but at Prize Picks, they are flexible with you. They have the flex play, which means you can still cash out your lineup if it isn't perfect. They also have an insurance policy for injury so that your lineup stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL, and that will get you $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, NHL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Kraken fans, it's a game day. And listen, lots of juice, lots of storylines around Shane Wright. Also, a lot of storylines around Jessica Campbell. But what I love is that Manon Rheaume, who some of you will know, a trailblazing goaltender, had a great sit-down conversation with Jessica Campbell. And I have to admit, outside of things that have come directly from the Seattle Kraken and our partners now with Tegna, probably one of the best interviews I've ever seen, outside of ours, of course, with Jessica Campbell. Some of the questions that she was asked in the media scrum yesterday, I am holding space and more patience than I normally would. And I'm also holding space for wow. Just wow. These questions would never, and I do mean never, ever, ever be asked to a man coaching in women's hockey. As a matter of fact, men in hockey, in women's hockey, are just like, nope, that's totally normal. They're not asked questions on if they see the game differently because they're a man, or do they get immediate respect? Or how have they had to work on getting the respect of women players because they're a man? So it's steeped in assumptions that come from a sexist perspective. I'm not saying the questions are sexist. I'm saying they are steeped in the perspective of a society that perpetuates sexism. And so listening to those questions as a woman, or as someone who can identify that they are coming from a bias, because I don't want to assume all women think the way that I do, or that all men cannot understand and appreciate where I'm coming from. My point is that those are a little tough. And it's like, let me just close my eyes, try not to roll them, and forge ahead. That being said, Jessica Campbell gave amazing answers, and I am so excited to get beyond this point so we can dive deeper into her story, because I listened to those interviews and I'm like, okay, next time I talk to Jessica, I can't wait to ask her this, and this. So many great things in the works for her, including a really interesting conversation on how she even decided that focusing on not just coaching, not outside of player development and skating coaching, but being able to focus on special teams was something that she could actually do, and do at a really high level. And that all came from her stop with the German national team. So I can't wait to break some of that down. I just need to let all of the other stuff just simmer down a little, and then we'll dive into it. But let's also dive into this matchup. I mentioned at the top of the show, both these teams coming into the matchup with 9 points. The away record for the Seattle Kraken, 2-1-0. The home record, 3-3-0 for the Canadiens. 4-4-1 in our last 10. Jared McCann, our leading scorer, 12 points. Nick Suzuki leads the Canadiens with 11. Power play much better on the Canadiens side at a 25.8% clip They also have a 90.3 penalty kill. So what does that tell me, especially given all of the shakeups that we've seen in the roster? Let's play 5-on-5. Winning the puck battles. You heard that Dan Bylsma was asked about why there were so many one-on-one drills, not just based off of what happened in the Hurricanes game, but also you heard Jared McCann. You heard Dan Bylsma talk about what this Canadiens team is doing successfully. So my 3 keys to the game are the 3 Fs: fun, fast, and forechecking. The fun, I don't want to say it's missing, but there is a little bit of anxious energy that I'm kind of getting from this Seattle Kraken team. I don't think they're overwhelmed. I don't necessarily think that they're overthinking or underthinking. I just don't know that they've identified how they think and operate best. So it's in flux. The energy is a little bit, it's all over the place. I want them just to enjoy playing hockey, being on the road with each other. The fast part. Well, what else can I say about that? I think you get the point. The team wants to play fast. Dan wants to play fast. They can play fast with the personnel that they have. I don't need to beat that point, right? The forechecking is, I'm underlining it for those listening on audio. That is, and the mindset and the mentality that you have to have an aggressive forecheck. That's what I think is what I would focus on if I were the Seattle Kraken. So knowing that they focused on one-on-one battles, that's that grit. That's that I'm going to be the better skater than you are at any given time. That's the mentality that I want to see. As far as what we're going to see in net, I will say I have not seen any reports on social media, at least at the time of this recording. So apologies if it's already out there. Who do we think between these 2 goaltenders is a little bit better when you have a team clog in front of the net? I don't know that I have an answer to that right now. I will say if we're having trouble getting out of the zone, Joey Daccord is probably the better choice. He likes to play the puck. He likes to be engaged. He's very communicative. So from that perspective, I'd go with Joey Dax. I honestly don't know. It's not something that I've given a lot of thought to, but it was interesting to hear Dan Bylsma say that he knows that's the approach for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, part of that, in my estimation, is on the defense. The defensemen have to be able to clear the front of the net and not give second, third chance opportunities. So I want to put that on the defense. When it comes to goaltending, I might just give a little bit of an edge to Joey Daccord, but I feel like some of my bias against Philip Grubauer, and again, it's not a huge margin, is likely because I'm thinking about some of the injuries as opposed to his actual performance. So I want to be honest with that. That's kind of where my mind is going and why I think I right now am a little more comfortable. So I'm going to actually look into some numbers on that, because it was something that Dan said that, especially as I was preparing for this, or as I played back the video on this episode, stood out to me after, I guess it was like the second or third time that I listened to that. So I think it's going to be interesting. We also know it's a road trip. We're going to see both guys. So whether it's Joey, whether it's Philip Grubauer, I honestly don't know that it matters too much, because we need a win. And the win is going to be predicated on what the skaters are able to do on the forecheck and overall just opening up the offense. So the 3 Fs are my 3 keys: fun, fast, forechecking. We have a game tonight. I want you to make sure you stay kind to yourself. Open yourself up to spread that kindness to others. Hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud on a game day, we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Hey, peace out, everybody.